So we begin with our prayer for student teacher as usual. By now you know what it is and you can all join in. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunuktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with a great deal of energy. May our minds be illumined. May we not unnecessarily gabble with each other, and peace, peace, peace be on all. So today, two things are happening today. One is, of course, the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. And the second thing will be it's International Yoga Day. So there are many events organized really by the Indian government because it's a United Nations Day. But it gives rise to a question of what is yoga. And I feel, along with many other things, this is a misunderstood subject. Now, I go to groups who are interested in the physical side of yoga, that we can broadly categorize as Hatha yoga, is derived from that. No matter what system of physical yoga you have, and there are so many different varieties on the market today, they really are all variations of this Hatha yoga. So that is, as it is taken conventionally in many Western countries and misunderstood greatly. So I think it's very easy to deal with the subject by removing the Sanskrit words and putting the vernacular words. And that's my starting point when I address so many groups who are interested in doing Hatha yoga. And I normally give a workshop under the title, How to Be a Yogi. But we can equally give this what is yoga, because that's the first question that arises. And then normally in front of a group, ask people, so what is yoga? And I receive a variety of answers. So let's remove this word completely and simply replace it with the word union. Because it's derived from two roots, yaj and yajir. Yaj, that is to join, to yoke together. And then, of course, there is the yajir from concentration, to unite your attention with the object of the attention. We have the faculty of attention, and when the attention turns on itself, like a spotlight on the mind itself, the interior of us, this is now a practical philosophy that is called yoga, Raja Yoga, or Dhyana Yoga, yoga of meditation. So any form of union is yoga, and in fact, the Bhagavad-Gita gives us 3 definitions of yoga. But one catch question I ask people is, how many yogas are there? And people do some counting on their fingers and toes and what have you. And whatever answer they come up with is normally not the correct one. I said there are at least 18 yogas, because 2 great textbooks on yoga are there. One is the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, that elucidates the subject of the science of meditation, or the science of spirituality, or the science of religion. How can religion be a science? This is a confusing term. Religion itself is a confusing term. But if we use Swami Vivekananda's definition, religion is realization, we won't go far wrong. It means it's something that is experienced, something that is seen, and also something that is led to by a series of logical steps. It is both intellectually logical and also experiential. So that most people are concerned with the outside of things, the exterior of things. And that's natural to the senses. The senses move outwards. Katha Upanishad tells us that the senses move outwards. It's as if the senses are like windows to the outside world. We're naturally orientated toward that. We grow up like that. But the interior examination is much more difficult. And the mind is a curious thing because it acts in a dual way. We not only are experiencing the objective world, but we're also experiencing a witness, a knower of it at the same time. And when the mind looks at itself, it's a curious thing because subject and object are both evident. And ultimately, yoga or union is a union where subject and object become the same thing. They merge. It cannot happen unless they're originally the same. And so yoga as a philosophy has to be supplemented by Vedanta. Vedanta is a philosophy of oneness, whichever way you look at it. And that in itself is yoga, where a completion of a union, it's already united. So let us examine a couple of the various aspects of yoga. And in answer to the question, how many yogas, I normally say, well, according to the second textbook on yoga, namely the Bhagavad-Gita, where every chapter is a yoga, there are at least therefore 18 yogas. 3 definitions I mentioned being there. One definition is, it is equilibrium of mind. It is termed as Samatva Yoga Uchyate. It is said to be equilibrium of mind. The second chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. And if you're studying the Bhagavad-Gita, by the way, one way to do it is to study it as you study a lecture or as you're taught to deliver a lecture. The exception is me, I never do it, but I should. That is to summarize what you're going to say in the beginning. Give an introduction. This is what I'm going to say. And at the end, this is what I said. And what you say is in between. And the way of the presenting the subject matter is exactly the same thing. So the second chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita tells us the whole thing. The last chapter, 18th chapter, tells us the whole thing again, a summary. This is what I said. And in between is the detail. So one particular method of studying this textbook on yoga will be to study the second chapter, study the 18th chapter, and then you have the overview, and then you go into the minute detail of it. Anyway, what is yoga? Equilibrium is truly yoga. That is, not being concerned with success and failure, what is called even-mindedness. Siddhya siddhyo samo bhuttva samattam yoga uchyate. Then the other definition is given not far from there. Established in this evenness of mind, it begins. Bhuti yukto yahati ubhe sukrita duskrite. One frees oneself in this very life from what? From virtue and vice alike. It's a wonderful way of thinking. Most people think we have to be good. But this is saying when you free yourself from any values, good and bad, then you have the final goal. You have the final sense of union. And then it goes on, tasmad yogaya yasva yogam karmaso kaushalam. Very important. What is yoga? Yoga karmasa kaushalam, skill in action. Yoga is skill in action. Once you establish yourself in this evenness of mind, then don't think that your whole thing is finished, your endeavor is finished, that you have achieved this union, this yoga, not only as a goal, but also as a process. So the process itself is called yoga, and the ultimate goal of it is also called yoga. The process is called manifesting the divinity from within, and various methods are being used. So in order to understand what is yoga, we have to understand a number of other things. is there some kind of purpose in life to which we are headed? Or is it just casual, chaotic, an accident, just a chance thing? If it's chance, there's no purpose. Of course, there are other kinds of purposes in life at different stages of your life. You have maybe a purpose that you will complete your studies well. As a student, that might be your purpose. And afterwards, having qualified in something, your purpose might be, let me get a job. And then after that, your purpose might be, let us maybe see if I can apply this to society and be useful. Maybe the purpose is to get married and have children and direct them in life. And maybe your purpose is to then provide shelter, not only an income, but shelter and so on. So these are all purposes, no doubt. But these purposes are all short-term. Is there some long-term purpose? And if there is, it would not be obviously external. There must be some internal thing, because the nature of a purpose, in other words, the nature of a process toward a purpose that we normally call evolution, involves involution. Something is involved in it. You can't get a big tree unless there's a seed. And who would suspect that the whole tree is there inside a seed? So the seed, the whole seed contains potential tree, and that now is unfolding, the original meaning of evolution, unfolding from within. But the withinness itself is the thrust, the movement, the motive. The whole thing is moving from inside, unfolding from inside, and the whole tree is contained in the subtle seed. You wouldn't suspect it, but that is a wonderful thing. So, various philosophies will need to cover this subject, not only as a philosophy, but also as a process, not only as a principle, but also as a practice. And we can use alternative language because in order to enact this, and in order to appreciate what it means, the interiority of it, the subtlety of it, we have to go to mystical terms. Now there's something called theosis in Eastern Orthodox religion, and that tells us that there is a mystical union. In Islam, there's a term that denotes oneness, and this also is taken as a kind of mystical union. But where did something join together to make a oneness? The Vedantic philosophy says, don't bother to ask that question, because there was never any division in the first place. You simply had to realize that you're already that. You're already united. In fact, the word united doesn't come into it. So the philosophy of yoga, espoused by Patanjali in Yoga Sutras, starts off as a dualistic system. It is purely a dualistic system, actually, until you come to a point where the last section, 4 chapters in Patanjali Yoga Sutras are there, and the last section is termed Kaivalya, isolation, independence, freedom. Now you get an inkling. And the whole of the thing is talking about samadhi, transcending normal, sense-bound experience, where there's a union. So even this infers a oneness, even though it is not specifically aiming for it or mentioning it. Another definition is given. What is yoga in the Bhagavad-Gita? It is the separation of the sense of pain, separation from pain. In other words, it is viyoga. It is deemed to be the opposite of yoga. It is a separation from the sense of union, another yoga, with pain. So why are we practicing all of this? We are practicing it in order to get the highest revelation or aspect of our united self. But in the dualistic system, it is described as united the individual soul with the universal one. But the actual experience of it will be, there always was that oneness. It was never disunited. This is the Vedantic addition to it. So where do we start? Well, we start, of course, by understanding these various definitions, but there's another definition, and that is given by Patanjali. And clearly, yoga means concentration, because that is the root of the word. Yoga is concentration. So the very first sutra, but we have to explain what we mean by sutra. Sutra means a thread. It comes through, of course, in the English language, in the medical terms, where we say suture, a thread. A surgeon will sew you up using a suture. Same thing is a thread. So what is yoga? From the very start, concentration. Concentration, this is the great, great definition. It is purely concentration. That means that in assessing what yoga is, we have to see what is the geography and the operation of the mind itself. And that means we catch something called thought. What condition is the mind in is this equivalent to saying, where is thought going? There's a movement within the mind. What's happening within it? Psychologists will be able to look into that and see whether the mind is in a scattered condition or a semi-concentrated condition, or whether it is one-pointed. And the aim, therefore, is concentration in the sense of bring the scattered mind together and learn to direct it in a systematic, scientific way so that it becomes a revealing factor, revealing the truth. The purpose, reveal the truth. The process, deal with the mind. Take your attention, steer it in a systematic way so that it becomes something like a powerful, illuminating light that shows up your own inner nature, your own internal self. Without this process, none of that can happen. The light is normally scattered elsewhere, focused on highlighting all the external objects. The eyes are light on something, and the interesting thing is that we don't actually see what we see, we only see what is the interpretation of the brain. So there is a shaky understanding of what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch, whatever the sense of the light on, and therefore to that extent not necessarily truthful, but there for our convenience sake. There so we can deal with the world. And when we identify ourselves individually, then we have to acknowledge it's only for passport purposes. We have to revalue things enormously, 100%, 360 degrees turnaround to see the world, familiar world that we understand and know and love, is actually not exactly what we see it as. We have to examine these things closely. And this examination is science. The scientific method is being applied. For this reason, this Raja Yoga is called the science of religion. So that famous statement is there, which is much misunderstood. What is yoga? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. What is yoga is restraining the mind stuff, or chitta, from taking various forms. These forms are called vrittis, waves, oscillations, disturbances, in a substance that we call chitta. We can interpret it as objective consciousness, the mind. We can think of it as something like a lake with waves in it. And normally, as long as these waves are in a state of disturbance, we won't find peace of mind. We'll always experience some painful existence. The book that is normally recommended to understand this is Swami Vivekananda's lectures or his dictation really, Raja Yoga, and there his introduction is revealing. The science of Raja Yoga, he says, in the first place, proposes to give us such a means of observing the internal states. Even before that, he says, in inquiring knowledge, we make use of generalization, and generalization is based on observation. So we cannot come against or across any truth unless it is something that is observed, not speculated on, not believed. So the science of Raja Yoga, it proposes a means of observing the internal states. We can easily observe the external things. The instrument of the mind itself, see the language. Instead of saying the mind, the brain, or any of these things, we're saying it's an instrument, immediately classifying it. Because an instrument is something for the good of something else. One principle in philosophy and philosophical thinking is something made from parts is not for its own good, but the good of some independent entity. I go into a car has many parts. It's there for the good of me, the driver, independent entity, to get inside it and use. It's not for the car at night to get up and all the parts come together and have a party or something like that. It's not for its own good. Some non-car entity has to be there. And this is the way that we proceed in terms of the body. The body has very parts. In the same way, the mind has so many parts, and therefore it's called antakarana, internal instrument, with many parts identified by their various faculties. What are these faculties? Well, internally, the senses are there. We think the senses are the eyes and the ears and so on, but they are useless without some mental hook into it. Some attention has to be put there, applied. Otherwise, you find a sleeping person, you can easily open the eyelids, the eyeball stares at you, you won't see anything. Attention has to be delivered to it. And when consciousness is withdrawn from the waking state, the eyes, the ears, and all the senses, they all play, and we call this dream. He goes on, the power of attention. Attention is a powerful thing. It has a potency. The power of attention, when properly guided, is systematically guided and directed towards the internal world, will analyze the mind and illumine facts for us. And the powers of the mind are like rays of light dissipated when they are concentrated. They illumine. So this is our only means of knowledge. There's no other way, our only means of knowledge. And everyone is using it both in the external and the internal world. And as I'm talking, you're analyzing what I'm speaking about, you're listening to it, you're absorbing it. And during these talks, a lot of information flows, and you may not catch everything. But during the week, one or two ideas will flash. And that's okay. Even if you take one or two ideas of understanding, the subject matter is very subtle, because our waking life is really an external experience. With this understanding, there's an internal editing process going on, acknowledging process going on, but we don't normally attend to it. So there's a psychology necessary, and all religion, all spirituality is really psychological process. Supposing you say, but what about love of God? Yes, psychological process is rallying all the emotions around that are disturbing this chitta, the mind stuff, and allowing all the waves in the mind to be neutralized well until you see what is there. It becomes a self-revealing thing. So all of this effort and all of this practice has only one purpose, and that is purifying and clarifying the mind. The waves in the mind have to be settled so that the truth sits there within and becomes self-revealed. You see, I have been studying recently the construction of the Christian Gospels, so-called Gospels, the misunderstanding about that word itself. Anyway, we'll leave that aside, that's a different subject. And there can easily be some understanding amongst early Christian devotees that maybe Jesus was apocryphal. John Baptist was apocryphal. He was talking about an afterlife. St. Paul was apocryphal. He was talking about an afterlife. But Jesus was talking about an inner life. And in Luke, we see, no, don't think that the kingdom of heaven is about to come, or it's here, or it's there. It's very clear, he says, the kingdom of heaven, for a truth I tell you, is within you. Same concept is there. Same discovery is there. It's all internal. What about this definition given in the Bhagavad-Gita, that with equilibrium of mind, you can then engage and yoga becomes skill in action, becomes an active thing. You become an expert in your field. You do all your work to the best of your ability without any stress or disturbance of mind. Yes, because if you're not doing it, then all your activities become disturbing, become either regretful or become full of anxiety. Am I doing this correctly? Become imbued with concerns of success or failure. And then future activities become full of anxiety because we are focused on the fruits of our activity, and Karma Yoga says, don't be focused on the fruits of your activity. I gave a talk on that the other day. So when you give all that up, then you've let go of all your concerns and anxiety, you get peace of mind. It's only concern, will I get it, won't I get it? And this is a form of desire. Desire alone disturbs the mind. And the opposite of it is fear. You desire something on the one side because you fear of losing it or some other thing on the other side. So there's a practical application to yoga if you can live without fear, live without pain, then not only will you have a joyful, useful, fruitful life, devoid of pain and difficulties, because difficulties will come, but viewed in a different way. The way in which you view them is like a game. Consider the whole of life to be a gymnasium where you learn to exercise your muscles. And you can also put this in the context of Hatha Yoga. So Swami Vivekananda goes on to say that everyone is using this attention both in the external and the internal worlds, but for the psychologist, the same minute observation has to be directed to the internal world, which the scientific man directs to the external. And this requires a great deal of practice. You won't catch it with a sauntering attitude, and you won't catch any achievement in life with a sauntering attitude. So from our childhood upwards, we have been taught only to pay attention to things external. A small child is given a rattle. Please listen to this. Entertained by looking at all the objects, getting to know the world. It's all an external environment. But never to things internal. And hence, most of us have nearly lost the faculty of observing the internal mechanism. Yoga is a process of getting back to that, tuning into it. To turn the mind, as it were, inside, stop it from going outside, and then to concentrate all its powers and throw them upon the mind itself, the instrument itself. And in order that it may know its own nature, to analyze itself, is actually very hard work. Yet, that is the only way. It's the second time he's used an exclusivist statement. That is the only way to anything which will be a scientific approach to the subject. Why should we adopt a scientific approach? That's the only way again. What is the scientific methodology? Get some credible authority to tell you something that you don't know. Then get that credible authority to show you how you construct a model. then get that credible authority to tell you how to do the experiment, then do the experiment and find out for yourself by direct experience the veracity of it or otherwise. So what is the use of such knowledge? Well, in the first place, knowledge itself is the highest reward of knowledge. And secondly, there's also utility in it. So when you get the highest knowledge, you've also got freedom. And you've got power. Whatever you know, if you know something, you have power over it. It becomes empowering. But secondly, it will take you away from all your misery. When, by analyzing his own mind, man comes face to face, as it were, with something which is never destroyed, something which is by its own nature eternally pure and perfect, he will no more be miserable, no more be unhappy. All misery comes from fear, from unsatisfied desire. Desire on the one side, fear on the other. And man will find that he never dies and that he will never have, or then he will have no more fear, no more fear. And the primary fear, the mother of all fears, is the fear of death. When he knows that he is perfect, he will have no more vain desires. All your desires will go. Because desire means I have a felt internal gap in me that I feel I can fill from the outside. But if I'm already full and free, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnamaiva Vashishyate. This is full, that is full. You can't subtract fullness or add to it. See the example. Oh, I'm an optimist. My glass is half full. Oh, I'm a pessimist. My glass is half empty. No, real optimist, my glass is always full and overflowing. It was never empty in the first place. No such thing as emptiness. So when you have this idea of perfection and fullness, then the desires will go. No need to fill anything more with gaps. And both these causes being absent, fear and desire, there will be no more misery. There will be perfect bliss even while in this body, not in any post-mortem condition, but here and now. And there is only one method by which to attain this knowledge, and that is called concentration. And all the yogas are headed toward this. So when we talk of yogas from a methodological point of view, we're talking of 4 aspects of the mind. Firstly, feelings. This is the easiest method of yoga. That is finding that there's a lovable, giving being that is always constantly with you, something like a friend, something like a companion, something like a mother or father, a lover, some constant entity that is with you, that is always flowing toward you. Its grace, its radiance is always flowing toward you. So today is the summer solstice. We can meditate on the glory of this. This is encapsulated in the primary mantra called Gayatri Mantra. Let us meditate on that illumines everything. That illumination come to my own mind. Let it illuminate me. There's something that lights everything. That lighting, what is that lights the sun? That shining, all things shine, said the Upanishads. Tameva Pantam. Lighting all things from within. So merely contemplating on this gives us a wonderful clue. Now, we are all capable of meditation. There's a young girl visited this afternoon. She participated in a meditation, in a guided meditation this evening. Said, oh, I can't meditate. I've tried to meditate, I can't do it. You see, the word try is contradictory to meditation. What is meditation? Meditation is taking the normal scenes from the waking state. It's melting, fixing mold. It's a transformer of the selected material that you see every day with your eyes, transforming it into its origin, into its divine origin. That's the process of meditation, a delightful exercise of expression. What is love of God? It's an expression. What is karma yoga? is an expression of energy. What is meditation? It's an expression of the light already in you. And what is jnana yoga? It is the expression of your own intelligence to discriminate and discern all the factual things in the world and to access the truth in that way. Now, what is Hatha yoga? Hatha yoga is expression of the health you already have. Doing all the exercises and so on, expressing the health you already have. Therefore, it requires a certain attitude. Now, there are many people who do Hatha yoga, do yoga exercise, for there can be multiple motivations. Vanity can be one. When I started off spiritual journey, I was always on a spiritual journey, but when I was in my teens, and I came across a book of Hatha yoga, very popular book, and I saw photographs of all these exercises, and I thought, I wonder, I've never put the body in these positions. Let me see, maybe I can do it. And I discovered I was young and supple enough to be able to do something. And so just from the photographs and descriptions and what have you, I managed to emulate all the pictures and directions of all the postures, most of the postures anyway. But you see, every yoga has this one supreme purpose in mind. We can't get away from it. And so there's a very limited value if your motive is not in line with that purpose. So there's no such thing as competitive yoga. There's no such thing as competitive meditation. It is all an expression of the health you already have, because the miracle and wonder of the human body is how well designed it is. A small teardrop is effective in terms of its chemical Lysol as a germ killer diluted in a 20-liter bucket of water. And supposing some germs get in, because it used to be the medical causal relationship with disease, something is attacking you, like there's an air force, as it were, of bacteria, always attacking you, and your defenses against it. So all disease is caused by this bacteria or viruses or what have you. Now, naturopathy disagrees with that. Naturopathy, the Ayurvedic system, is built on a different philosophy. Nothing is wrong. Everything is correct. Everything is working as it should work. I come from Africa. I never met an elephant with heart problems, cardiac arrest. I never met a giraffe with heart problems, even though the heart has to pump up the long neck against gravity. I never met a buffalo with diabetes. So all these in the wild, these are beings, creatures that are living in their natural conditions. And where do we fall short of it? Well, a cow chews the cud 4 times. The 4 stomachs are there. But humans chew the cud of resentment. They bring it up again and again and again. 20 years ago, this happened. Then you go to a psychiatrist or psychologist. What's wrong, my child? They won't say my child. They say my fee payer. Never mind. They say, what's wrong? Please sit on or lie on the proverbial couch, pay me a fee so that you can tell me what a fool you are. And you were a fool when you were small, and you're still a fool now. What is the problem? Oh, well, my father did this and my mother did that. All right. How old are you? 45. All right. So why don't you play a new record? What have you been doing for the last 40 years? You've been revamping the same thing, chewing the cud of all of this time and time again. How do you think the cells of the body will respond? They'll vibrate with whatever thought is there. Mind and body are not separate. It's part of the yoga philosophy. What we call mind is subtle matter. What we call matter is gross mind. That's all. Only a degree of subtlety. So thought is so powerful, it acts instantaneously. Immediately a thought is there in a given second. Every single cell of the body whatever it is, 30 trillion, 70 trillion cells being there, each one is vibrating with a thought, because its gross manifestation is the physical organic body. So we don't begin with something is wrong. We don't begin with a desire. We don't begin with a fear. We begin with a sense of fullness, a philosophical point of view that is aligned to nature. We are quite confident that the body knows what it's doing. Every time you put a pill inside the mouth is equivalent to so much of fear in the human body, so much of doubt in the human body's capacity. Why don't you trust the body and add this dimension? Some loving being is digesting your food. Some loving being is repairing your cells. Some loving being is solving all your problems in dreams. Some loving being is moving your heart. Some loving being is moving unconsciously. We call it, you see, instinctively moving the diaphragm muscle up and down. And what is our response? We ignore it completely and go into depression. Something is wrong in my life. Then something is wrong in my body. Elevate the mind. So this is what is behind it. Now, all yoga systems are orientated toward the purpose in life. And the most important, significant aspect of this, apart from steering the emotions in the right way, apart from steering your will or your physical energy in a certain way, apart from using a discerning judgment through the intellect, apart from all of these things that are themselves called yogas, namely bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, there is this dhyana or meditation yoga. And what are the obstacles toward it? First obstacle is the body. For this reason, you do everything necessary to make this body a fit instrument. Just as the mind is an instrument, body is also an instrument. And we can revalue it. Now, I've told you this many times before, so this is nothing new to you. I'm simply telling you again. Why don't you revalue the body as the divine earth car, or God's housing, or God's mansion, or God's house, and the mind, the Lord's sitting room, His creative office? Why don't you revalue everything in this way? If you are able to do this, then you're immediately detaching from the instrumentality of this body, and then you're inspired. Why don't I make this instrument as clean and as pure and as fit and as healthy as it was intended? God doing His part, if you want to put it in those terms, from inside, and you completing what is necessary on the outside, cleaning the body. So Patanjali puts this as under the category of observances, what is called niyama. What are these observances? Starts off with purification. Make sure that the body is clean. Make sure that the mind is clean. Make sure that these two aspects, body and mind, are fit instruments for revelation of that which is inside, removing any disturbing obstacles. Because if you sit down for meditation, then you'll be meditating, if you're not careful, on an arthritic knee or a bad back. Now, Patanjali in this process mentions asana. In fact, he puts it, the whole question of asana is, and don't forget this is a sutra, it's bare minimum, giving you a thread, reminding you by word association of everything you discussed, everything Patanjali discussed in his school of philosophy. Sthira sukham, asanam, simple. Literally, steady, easy posture. We should adopt a steady, easy posture. For what purpose? For meditation. Vyasa gives a commentary. Before he gives a commentary, all these yoga postures and all these kriyas, purification mechanisms within Hatha Yoga, including the subject of pranayama, controlling the flow of energy that has arrived at your substation called human body and mind, directing it in an elevating way so that it works for you, not against you. In other words, calming the nervous system. That's a whole science in itself. It's okay. But asana means a seat. Now, what is very impressive in Zen Buddhism, Zen Buddhists, before they meditate, they do a salutation to the seat before they sit on it. In Hindu puja, we do the same thing. That is a provision. You bless the seat. You put a flower there, dipped in sandalwood and rice. Put it there, put a flower there, as they say, and then say a mantra, and that seat then becomes sacred. Everything becomes sacred through ritual and corresponding mantra. So all these systems are laid out in two extremely important texts. There are other texts, but these are the principal ones, the Giranda Samhita and the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. They do not give any, although they mention all the asanas and so on, they don't give any detailed descriptions of any of the asanas or very few of the asanas, except those that are necessary for meditation. These are Padmasana, Siddhasana, Virasana, and so on. All of these, because you have to keep the body in a certain alert condition to meditate efficiently. The Swami Vivekananda puts it in this way. He tells us in another reference, and it is also a commentary, of course, to the sutra, which is that posture that I've just read out, is that which is firm and pleasant, easy. He says, now comes asana posture. Until you can get a firm seat, you cannot practice the breathing and other exercises. Firmness of seat means that you do not feel the body at all. In the ordinary way, you will feel that as soon as you sit for a few minutes, all sorts of disturbances come into the body. But when you have got beyond the idea of a concrete body, in other words, when you have revalued it, you will lose all sense of the body. The body then is catered for. What are the disturbances? First one, body. Make the body healthy, make it supple, make it suitable for meditation, adopt a firm and easy posture, and then you have removed the body as a disturbance. Disease being one of the great obstacles. Disease, grief, and so on. Patanjali goes through all of that. So you want to take away disease as much as possible. You feel neither pleasure nor pain. Now, it's not quite as simple as this, as simply doing exercise, because the mind itself has to be reorientated. We have to take away desire and fear. We have to live in such a way that we don't have any disturbances. We have peace of mind. In fact, self-control and peace of mind are prerequisites for meditation. When people come and apply to do my meditation workshop, I ask them, why do you want to do meditation? They say, to get peace of mind. I said, you're at the wrong course. Go and get peace of mind first, then you'll be able to meditate. So he goes on, and when you take your body up again, it will feel so rested. What is the key to minimal sleep? Meditation. You get complete rest in meditation. Don't forget, in sleep, you will move your position multiple times. There's a cycle that happens when you sleep. It goes from drifting into rapid eye movement or dream, and then going into dreamless sleep state where no activity takes place. And then that repeats. It repeats 4 or 5 times in a night. And each time, each start of a cycle, you'll turn over. You'll change your posture. Ultimately, you may end up with the same posture that you went to sleep in. That's okay. So, What kind of rest is that? Disturbed sleep. How did you sleep? Some people say, oh, I had a disturbed sleep. I kept waking up. People ask me, how did you sleep? I say, I don't know, I was asleep. So that's another answer to the question. Anyway, so meditation will give you complete rest. And when you have succeeded, complete rest means I never tried to do anything. Everything is easy and natural. I'm simply gliding across a border, guiding the mind systematically to a place where only one thought remains. That then is meditation. When you have succeeded in conquering the body and keeping it firm, your practice will remain firm. But while you're disturbed by the body, then your nerves become disturbed and you cannot concentrate the mind. But we can go to a classical commentator, Vyasa, on this sutra. He says the restraints and observances have been described with attainments. We shall now describe the posture. Of these, posture is steadily easy. Thus, for example, Padmasana, otherwise known as lotus posture. Padmasana, Virasana, that is sitting on the heels, Bhadrasana, Swastika, Dandasana, Supasraya, Parayanka, Krancha, Nisadana, Hastina Sadhana, Ustrani Sadhana, Samasmastana, Sturi Sukha, so on. You can go on. Siddhasana and so on. All of these you can go on. Those who are familiar with these yoga postures will know what I'm talking about. Anyway, we can't leave it there because Vachaspati now explains what Vyasa means. So he introduces the next aphorism. Restraints and observances and so on. Of these, posture is steady, easy. Steadiness means absence of motion. You need to be able to sit for prolonged periods of time without the body disturbing you. How will you do that unless some practice of subtlety is engaged in? Of course, in these days, you can meditate sitting on a chair. For Western people, sometimes it's not easy to sit in these postures. In fact, well nigh impossible, unless you practice this Hatha yoga. And so, but even then, the rules still apply. It must be easy. You must be in a state where the body is alert. Your chest, your head, your neck must be in a straight line. The ribs must be, or the rib cage must be in a position to support the weight of your body. Why is this? Because the spine is the central cable of the entire nervous system. And you know yourself. Somebody asks you, how are you, Swami? Oh, I'm fine. You can see by your posture that this is absolutely not the case. But somebody with an erect posture, yes, I'm fine. You immediately know, yes, that person is healthy, standing upright. Stand upright with his shoulders back. One of the principles of a very popular book. There's a controversial author, psychologist actually, clinical psychiatrist actually, Dr. Jordan Peterson, very famous now. But he writes a book, 12, I think it's 12 something, 12 keys to success or something like that. I'm not sure exactly of the title. Anyway, one is stand upright with your shoulders back. Immediately you do that and walk like that, your whole attitude changes, isn't it? And the key value that you need to engender would be strength. Strength of what? Strength of the body, strength of mind. All these Hatha Yoga asanas are there to strengthen the mind. By focusing the texts on postures suitable for meditation, it's quite clear that all of this is not for vanity's sake. It's not to orientate yourself toward the body. It's not to make you body conscious. It's simply to take this instrument and tune it up. Make sure that it is suitable. So Swami Vivekananda also mentions this in another place, if I can get the reference on it. So he's talking about the result of this branch of yoga, Hatha Yoga. He says, It is designed to make people live long. Health is the chief idea, the one goal of the Hatha yogi. There's a great deal of investment in modern world toward longevity. How can we extend our life? It's discovered that in so-called blue zones throughout the world, there are long telomeres. That is, at the end of certain structures around the DNA, these long telomeres, when they get shorter, it means your life is getting shorter. Your biological life is long when the telomeres are long, and there's a great deal of research now into how to extend these and live much longer. The Hatha yogis know how to do it. There was, and I'm repeating some from other talks on health and so on, but there was a man called, I think of it now, anyway, he writes, Alexis Carroll is his name, he writes the book, Man the Unknown. He was a Nobel Prize winner. He took simple cells from a chicken's heart and sustained them in laboratory conditions, understanding the nutrient requirement to keep the cells alive, and starting them off with a small electrical current and then leaving it, and then extracting from the test tubes exactly the amount of waste products that was necessary, knowing that if you keep the internal fluid of a cell in pristine condition, these cells can be kept indefinitely. In the case of experiment, 10 years, way beyond the lifespan of a chicken. And he ended just out of convenience, ended the experiment. He made the point. If we keep this fluid absolutely clear and clean, then we have access to longevity, was the theory. Anyway, the Hatha yogi is determined not to fall sick, and he never does. It's a preventative way, because why should you? If you remove this anxiety from you, from the mental state, if you eat the right things, as a wild animal does in Africa, if you exercise correctly, as a wild animal does in Africa, then none of these diseases that come to man and domestic animals also will be present. So he lives long. 100 years is nothing to him. He's quite young and fresh when he's 150, without one hair turned gray. But that is all. A banyan tree lives sometimes 5,000 years, but it is a banyan tree and nothing more. So if a man lives long, he is only a healthy animal. 1 or 2 ordinary lessons of the Hatha yogi are very useful, and he extracts something from them. For instance, some of you will find it a good thing for headaches to drink cold water through the nose. As soon as you get up in the morning, you make a kind of pumping action in the throat and do it in that way. And the whole day your brain will be nice and cool, and you will never catch cold. It's very easy to do. Put your nose into the water, draw it up through the nostrils, and make a pump action in the throat. After one has learned to have a firm, erect seat, one has to perform according to certain schools. According to certain schools is what he's saying. A practice called the purifying the nerves, and he goes on to the next subject. Okay, that was all part of the Hatha yoga, and it is related to this Raja yoga on this basis, that the first obstacle that you have is the body. Make the body strong and healthy. All right, I've tried to summarize because time is now almost over. So what is yoga? We can replace it by the simple term union. Bearing in mind that we have a central purpose in life. What is that? To realize the divinity of our own self. Whichever way you describe it, that's what it amounts to. A mystic union is necessary. A theosis, as people from the Christian Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox tradition say. Then all our various branches of yogas, namely catering for every aspect of the mind, the emotional side, the intellectual side, the willing, active, doing side, and the capacity for equilibrium of all this called meditation. These are the 4 yogas. Swami Vivekananda says, practice one or more or all of these and be free, and suggests that we should really balance all of them in this day and age. Well, that's okay. Doing that, what are the obstacles that we have to remove? If you do these Hatha yoga exercises as interpreted, yoga is interpreted in this way in the Western countries, then unfortunately, even if you manage to extend your life to 100 years and more in a healthy way, and not one hair turned gray, unlike my own beard, then you are you won't gain anything. You certainly won't be free. A banyan tree living for 5,000 years is still a banyan tree with no advantage. But keeping healthy, if you understand it as part of a system that will tune up and keep the instrument of the body healthy, and through right thinking, keep the mind healthy and understand the interconnection between the two, keep the two healthy, then you'll be in a good condition for the possibility of meditation and an internal revelation where the mind goes into a state of non-disturbance. Not a morbid state, not a state where no activity takes place, not an emptying of the mind, but a filling of the mind with correct thoughts, whereby pure thoughts, noble thoughts, act in a neutralizing way to pacify all the upsetting waves in the mind, so that we can get a clarity of vision and a self-revelation. So it begins with understanding what our purpose is. In the language of Swami Vivekananda, even from his Raja Yoga, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this from within. That is our central goal, our central purpose. Park it in a place and then live our life as a progressive movement toward that also is called yoga. And so even when you do yoga exercise, it should be done as an expression, a joyful expression of the life you already have, as a kind of worship. This is why a central part of the yoga practice is called Surya Namaskar. When you do Surya Namaskar, literally a salutation, a kind of worshipful adoration to the sun, that which lights the sun. If you will, a cosmic sun, a cosmic light, an illuminating factor. When you do this, you can add an extra dimension to it. You can literally visualize the sun in front of you. Slow your movement down and make every kind of movement something like a reverential, ritualistic movement of the body, something like Tai Chi, a smooth flow, catching the flow of energy and reproducing it in the human body and appreciating the energetic flow in the body itself. In this way, you do a round of exercise like this, strengthening your body, no doubt, strengthening the physical instrument, and in a sense also strengthening your emotional capacity, strengthening also your will. All of this is useful. But if you do it with a sense of body consciousness, this will be against you. It will be against you because one other obstacle, apart from the body, is the association with the body that we call egoism. And egoism is a prime obstacle. In fact, it is the main obstacle we have. By dissociating from the human body and mind, we are effectively removing the harmful aspects of egoism. And we are able to adopt the ego now as an open channel for divine grace to flow, something that is useful. So these are some thoughts really shared with you on the subject, what is yoga? We'll finish it off with that last statement. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thank you.